Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fanfinity community stream, now in podcast form. We're still figuring it out, but thank you all for joining us. We had a couple of technical difficulties last time, so we are here again to hop in, bring you the content about the Lorcana Whispers in the Well. We got top decks for you guys. We got some deck doc and just, some additional information that you don't want to miss. So, first off, let me welcome my two wonderful guests again. Kawa, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be back, and I'm super excited to be talking about some of the top meta decks within Whispers in the Well.
Excellent. And then in the second seat, we have here the incredible Baker, LorcanaVillain. Welcome.
How's it going? Yeah, thanks for having us again. Glad we were able to find the time to finish this off because we weren't done chatting. We weren't done yapping about Lorcana, so we scheduled extra time to yap. And looking forward to talking about a couple of decks, hearing what Kawa's been brewing, hearing what you've been doing as well, Emma. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Now, let's take a look at some of the decks that you guys brought that you want to talk about, that you want to take a look at with the viewers at home. So first off, we have the deck by Kawa. Kawa, we have here a feature deck, Sapphire Steel. Why did you go for that?
I want to give a huge shout out to many people here because this is not my typical deck. I have personally been working on like an Amber Emerald deck a lot, which is like some Circle of Life stuff, which is actually doing quite well within the meta at the moment. But I wanted to highlight this deck because I really think it is one of the strongest decks we've seen come out of the gates within week one of Whispers in the Well. And it utilizes many of the new cards from the new set, such as the Cinderella Dream Come True. Everyone's been talking about this card for how powerful it is. It also uses the Goliath Clan Leader, the new Headless Horseman. But I'm going to talk through this deck a little bit, and I do want to give a huge shout out to Sky Lorcana, one of my fellow hosts from the Podcana podcast. He took a version of this deck to a tournament this past weekend and performed very well with it. And I know some other players brought similar versions. So I'm going to go through the cards really, really quickly. I won't spend like too much time, but starting off, you've got like for your one drops, you've got Captain Hook and Mulan. I think on Sky's version, he was on 4 Mulan and 2 Captain Hook, which kind of makes sense because, as you start to draw, one cost cards later into the game, you want them to still do something. So like drawing Mulans over Captain Hooks makes more sense. You can do filter, you can try and draw into some of your more big bomb cards like Tinkerbells, Hades, Headless Horseman. But in a meta that is filled with Tinkerbell Giant Fairies and also Malicious, Mean, and Scary, I think for just having one drops around on the board, having something like a Captain Hook over Mulan, stat line wise, is actually a little bit better. So I think you can do some splits. I think doing a 4-2 split, a 3-3 split, or a 2-4 split makes sense. If you have the reasons to back it up, I think it makes perfect sense. Moving into, you've got Tipo Sale, turn 2 ramp options. It's exactly what you need to be doing. For the 4-cost slot, we have this Cinderella. Some of these versions of Blue Steel are also running the 4-cost Hida, which is another princess. A card you can kind of ramp into. It enables you to then sink He Hurled His Thunderbolt. It's protected because of its ward ability. But what Sky has very much found is that Cinderella is always the better 4-cost card to play. And it's even better that if you miss your Cinderella, if you just like do another form of ramp during your turn 3. So if you've played Tipo or Sail, if during your turn 3 you just play another Tipo, another Sail, or another one jump ahead, like this deck has 10 ways to ramp on turn 2. Like taking a turn off that way is actually just way better because you really want to be going into your turn 4 playing a 6-drop. So what are these? Goliaths, Tinkerbells, that type of stuff. The other option to include in this slot is like a 1 or 2 Pleakley. Honestly, that's like the next place I would go. I'd be closer to playing a Pleakley than playing something like the Kida. Yes, the Kida can sing He Hurled His Thunderbolt, and the Pleakley can't sing it, but Pleakley is just an extra body that still allows you to get the immediate impact of ramping, and then you can still play your 6-cost on turn 4. But the problem with playing too many Pleakleys then is you're diluting your pool of really big draws as the game goes on, right? If you draw into a Pleakley when you want to be seeing a Vincenzo or a Hades, it's pretty bad. So I think there's a balance. I think you could honestly play like 1 or 2 Pleakley makes perfect sense. You've got Namari, which I only realized is really cool. It's like a very unique card that it's a villain and a princess, which I think is very, very cool. So like very, two very different archetypes. But this Namari combos very well with the Cinderella. You could honestly play Namari on your turn 4, even if you don't play it Tinkerbell or Goliath. Goliath is definitely the better card to play when you're going first. I think Namari is maybe the better card to play when you're going second, and maybe Tinkerbell against some of those more aggressive matchups. Not too much to say about Hades and Vincenzo, just your big, strong cards. And then the Headless Horseman here, one of the new cards. It's when you play this character, each player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random. And then chosen opposing character gets 2 damage dealt with based on how many actions were discarded in total. So for each action, 2 damage is dealt. On average, you'll hit something for 4, which is quite good against like the Genie stat line, right? Like against a 2/4 Genie. The Horseman can do some work. In some cases, if you've lined up your hand pretty well, where let's say you have 3 actions, or like you've got 2 actions, your opponent might have 1. You could be taking out Hades in some cases, which is like very, very strong, but I wouldn't count on dealing 6 damage consistently. And then not only because you play this Headless Horseman, but yes, you're playing a lot of actions and songs in this deck. You're playing 10 songs, which combos well with Goliath because you want to be actually emptying your hand to be able to use the redraw up to 2 part of Goliath and not discarding yourself. And then all of these other actions, like your Develop Your Brains, your Vision of the Future, these are kind of your filter cards, especially a card like Vision to say, if I top deck Vision, then I can search for my perfect Hades or my perfect Vincenzo, etc. So honestly, this is just like a super, super, super solid deck so far within the meta. I think there's definitely ways to counter it. I think some of the aggro decks are definitely going to give this some trouble. Like this deck's not playing Spooky Side, so it's not like it can do that Tipo into Cinderella into Spooky and clear a board. If the meta starts to shift in that direction, I think you can definitely fit in like maybe 2 copies of Spooky Side. But I think the more aggressive decks will definitely give this some trouble. But yeah, that's Blue Steel overall. I'd love to pass it over to you guys to hear your thoughts. But that's the general gist of it, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. As you say, I've seen a couple of similar builds from the community, and you highlight Sky. I want to ask your opinion on one thing. Sky being quite outspoken with his opinion that he thinks Cinderella is potentially in that ban-worthy conversation. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, when I've played with Cinderella, she is extremely powerful and pretty warping in my opinion. I don't want to hop on Sky's train and say that I think that this card should get a ban. I do find it funny that a lot of the community will see a deck. So for example, this deck actually does play a couple more princesses in the form of the Namari and the Mulan, which is nice. But a deck like Blue-Green that plays the Cinderella, like it's the only princess in the deck. You don't need any more princesses. I think people are getting hung up on looking at a deck and saying, oh, why is there no princesses to combo with the Cinderella? Because she combos with herself. That's what makes this card so strong. So I know they're probably, after the whole bookie situation, I don't know if they're very keen to do erratas, but like you could see this card have some text change maybe to say, whenever you play another princess character, then you trigger this. But then honestly, at that stage, this card becomes infinitely worse because
this
is basically like an on-play card. Even though it's like an end of turn effect, it's doing something immediately when it comes to the game. At least it's still doing something at the end of your turn, which is ramping you and also replacing itself and also drawing a card. So I think if they made like an errata or a change like that, the card would honestly probably become unplayable. So I don't know if it's ban-worthy. I think it's important to keep an eye on this card. And the other thing to think about is, so we know another rotation is going to be coming once we get to set 13. So once that rotation happens, if there's no easy way to do like turn 2 ramp into this card, then it changes things up, right? I think what makes this so strong is like you've got sails, you've got 1-jumps, you've got Tipos. 1-jump will remain, right? So you can still play 4 1-jumps, but maybe we lose another, like maybe there won't be 8 turn 2 ramp options anymore, and it makes it harder to consistently play Cinderella on turn 3. There are other ways to do it. So like, for example, in Amber Sapphire, right? You just get an Aurora, you play 1-cost Aurora, and then you play whatever 2-cost, and then you quest with your 1-cost Aurora and you get Cinderella out. So that could even be the direction, and which would maybe be a little bit more thematic and fitting for the princess deck, right? You play Aurora with the Cinderella and a bunch of other princesses. So, yeah, that's my thought on it, that I think this card is extremely, extremely, extremely strong. But maybe it's balanced in the sense that, like, you have to, like, the card you have to be getting to is something like a spooky site in order to deal with aggro. And if you're against an aggro deck, on turn 1, turn 2, and turn 3, they're flooding the board, they're questing, they're getting out ahead of you, and you need to get to an answer. Like, the closest thing this deck can do is a Tinkerbell, but even a Tinkerbell is not going to have so much impact on the board unless your opponent has everything that's one willpower, you know?
If your opponent has a Tiana, your Tinkerbell does
Nothing, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just the potential to skip turns, right? It's obviously you go 1 drop and then you go from 2 ink turn to 4 ink turn 4 to 6. And then a deck like this that you've presented, which just thrives from being able to play essentially a turn 4 Tinkerbell, a turn 4 Goliath, especially if they've done anything to start trying to draw any card.
Yes.
You've been able to empty your hand with T-Po, then Goliath is like doing nothing but fuel you. But as you say, like in a future without Sail or T-Po, if who knows, they might just give us some more turn 2 Inkable Ramp. But if that doesn't come to be and 1 jump becomes the best we've got, at least you then, like, if you want to open that combo of 2, 4, 6, then you need to play these 4 uninkable songs in your deck that we all agree are infinitely, like, worse than T-Po's.
Way worse. Yeah.
And Sails for various reasons. So maybe that's a lot more realistic and it becomes more of a high roll. And again, if you've only got 4 copies of a turn 2 ramp as well, that's another thing. But yeah, the spooky side plays being able to, because I've been playing some red-blue. That was my way of trying out some Cinderella, because ramping high and slamming Hades and Maleficent Dragons sounds like a lot of fun to me. So I was playing that out a lot, and like I did get to this point where you wanna, if you've got, obviously your number 1 priority is turn 2 ramp. But if I had 2 and 4, I would hold the spooky site just in case. Because if they are aggro, like I need that exact curve.
As they're not Cinderella away, right?
Exactly, and I can or T-Po it away, because you'll find out by probably turn 1 what they're playing. At the same time, if you are, so that means that I should be rewarded for that, right? Hold the spooky site, like on the off chance you are aggro, knowing that I could play into that less offensive but stops me losing the game curve, right? But then how many players of copies of Spooky Sight are we playing? Like, who are going to be the greedier players that are going to throw away their Spooky Sights and say, if it's aggro, I'll draw into another Spooky Sight? Will you? Are you playing 3 copies where that's like semi-reliable and reasonable to fall back on? So I think the Cinderella like conversation is really, really interesting. But yeah, in a deck like this that you presented, like hyper ramping into Goliath or Tinkerbell, sounds super good. Even if you end up just playing the Mari, again, you're establishing an engine and a body that just gets bigger and bigger. The Vincenzo and Hades are like just incredible removal. And outside of Headless Horseman, Vincenzo just laughs in your face. And in your new Headless Horseman, I'm talking about my red one, but you got your own, this steel one, which I am a believer in. I think, as you say, maybe you can manipulate your hand to be able to hold some actions, like especially if you don't go down a Goliath chain. Obviously, if you do, then it's harder to hold on to cards. But maybe you didn't need to play a lot of actions just to get you to the Headless Horseman. Maybe you played T-Po, maybe you played Cinderella, maybe you inked 2 or 3 actions. I think there's still good odds for you to potentially be holding some. And again, you're running a large enough action package that drawing 3 should give you some more. And against any other blue deck, blue-green, blue-steel, blue anything, they are going to have a high density of actions as well, which are hopefully contributing. So I agree. I think 4 is the average that you're going to get for Horseman, but even that is enough for, like, as you say, things like Genie. Because like outside of Hades, like evasives can be well, again, you've also got 4 Zeus and 4 strengths. I don't suppose genies and evasives are necessarily a problem, but if you can pop it over body, even better. But yeah, good odds to hit 6. But yeah, I think that deck's fantastic. Cinderella and Goliath is so oppressive, right? Like I listened to the Artcast not long ago where he was moaning about something that I kind of agree with. Like, why do they not want us to have cards in hand? Like, there's so many decks that just punish you for wanting to draw cards, which I'm not a fan of. Don't get me wrong, I'm very much enjoying the meta overall. But yeah, Goliath just goes against the complete opposite of the way I like to play the game. So yeah, looks good.
I have a question. In the entire
Yes.
metagame, like what is its position, for example? How is it game against Emerald, Sapphire, Blue-Green? Go ahead.
So yeah, I guess green blue. I think there's a couple of different things you can do. You can do like Tipo into Cinderella into Goliath. Use that as kind of a disruption tool. They're very much a combo deck. They're trying to do like ship Clarabelle or set up their own Cinderella stuff. You've also got Headless Horseman, which is a very good disruption tool against them. Not only can you hopefully remove one of their characters. I actually think that the breakpoints of some of their characters are important. So, for example, their 4-cost Donald Duck, this 2/5, might not always get hit by the Headless Horseman, but like Baker said, it's also a Sapphire deck that has a lot of actions, so there's a possibility you can get hit by it. But I think the biggest thing that makes the matchup okay, still in my opinion, is they may have a hard time dealing with a lot of your big threats, like even how big Namari can grow. Once they do their combo of the Prince Philip and Malicious, Mean, and Scary, you do have an answer to it in the form mainly of Hades, right? Hades is the card you need to be thinking about that this card can get rid of the Prince Philip. But I think it's hard to say. I don't think it's a very clear, I'm super favored in this matchup. I think it's close. I think this deck has some tools against the green-blue deck. But I would say in general, this deck thrives against mid-range decks. So something like Amethyst Steel, I think this deck would have a very, very good matchup into, because they're playing to board, they're playing a lot of characters, and you can establish, like, I'll play a Vincenzo into a Tinkerbell, into a Hades, into a Horseman. A lot of your characters you're playing all have such high impact on play abilities that I think against something like a mid-range deck, this would be pretty good. That's my initial opinion. Weak to aggro, okay in controlling mirror matches, and pretty good against mid-range deck.
All right. If it's good for you guys, then we can hop into Baker's featured deck, because Baker, you brought something spicy. You brought just something very creative to show the people. We got Ruby Amethyst, a personal favorite, but I yield to the villainous master of this deck. Why Ruby Amethyst?
I mean, that's a multi-layered question. Red Purple will have always and will always be my colors. I'm always going to see if it can work. Even last set where it really didn't, I still was stubborn a little bit. But I think we are much better positioned going into set 10 format. I think we got a couple of really interesting tools. Last set, the only real reasons to run red cards, because again, purple cards, great, but there's a lot of good colors that work well with purple. And last set, the only real reason to pair your purple cards with your red cards were things like Lumiere, who is a great mat fixer, and again, against things like Under the Sea, can really insulate you. And again, just in general as a mat fixer, like Elsa's one-shotting Dumbos and things like that, it's just a fantastic tool. And we were able to play the Daring Visitor Sisu, who is not here anymore, but she was just, again, one of the, I think, the best answer in the game probably to Tiana. You could make an argument for strength, but just on a flat body, get rid of the Tiana. So, and obviously that was a very popular deck. And there were a couple of other semi-relevant targets, a Captain Hook, things like that. But that being the case, we were not thriving. But new Whispers in the Well format, the greatest new tools we got, number one is this Diablo, the 2-cost uninkable Watchful Raven, who's a 3/3 that quests for 2. This will be a semi-familiar stat line, the likes of Mr. Smee from Steel, who was inkable and took a damage at the end of the turn if there wasn't a captain, but again, different inks should be better or worse at doing different things. And this is like very similar, just as a 2-drop 3/3 that's going to quest for 2. So this gives Ruby Amethyst a little bit more aggression, which is something that I think it was absolutely lacking. Like, it was not so much that it was lacking, because Amethyst have always had so many good 1-drops that you could just flood the field with them, and that in itself was quite aggressive. But now we have this really cheap 2-drop that is going to trade into the majority of the things that are going to challenge into an early game, or you got more than one quest off with it, which is great. So this is just a fantastic tool and like a great reason to want to run red cards, just because of this super simple but very aggressive stat line in a meta which has become so control focused with so many of these blue decks that are wanting to take the time to set up into their mid to late range characters, a la the blue steel list that we just looked at, the blue green lists. They don't all have the best early game. If you press twice with this Diablo in the early game, that is fantastic. And the other tool that we got, who I've been high on since day one, is the Headless Horseman Terror of Sleepy Hollow. It was a 5-cost uninkable 4/2 quest for 2. On play, you banish a character with 2 strength or less, and during your turn, whenever an opposing character is banished, each of your characters gets +1 strength this turn. I made a whole graph showing all of the relevant targets for Horseman, but the most significant ones obviously being 4-cost Genie, Elsa, Vincenzo. I think Donald Duck Perfect Gentleman is also
I'd say Tramp as well. The 7-cost Tramp is very important. Yeah.
Yes, and Tramp. And again, there are then plenty of other, even just picking off a 1-drop, can be. If you pop something with this Horseman, you're happy. But there are some really annoying characters in the game, the Genies, the Elsas, Vincenzo, which are otherwise really tough to get off of boards, that this Horseman just waves goodbye to. Not to mention that, do not sleep on the Gathering Strength ability. Let's assume we banish something. This ability already triggers to give +1 strength to all of our characters, which can be super good with something we're playing a higher density of 1-drops to, this whole deck has been on a journey. Ever since Whispers in the Well was released, I have tried a multitude of different ways of playing Ruby Amethyst, and I was playing, this is very different to the way I was playing this deck. I was playing Maleficent Dragons for a start. I wanted to be both the aggro deck and have that ability open to us with 1-drops and Diablos, and Diablo into Sisu, into Genie is an extremely aggressive curve. I also wanted to have access to the Maleficents. Again, a lot of these blue decks are going to want to play Hades on you. The game is often going long against these decks anyway. So Maleficents are just fantastic answers to the Prince Philips, the Hades, the Dumbos, the Vincenzos, basically anything as long as it doesn't have ward. But I was having mixed results. I think I got up to about a 62% win rate playing this sort of playing both ends version of Ruby Amethyst. And I do think you can build it that way, and I think there's absolutely room for a couple of cuts here. There's a couple of cards I'm not completely sold on anyway, where if you wanted to add a 2 or a 3 count of Dragon, I think that's perfectly reasonable. It's inkable, and a decent amount of games you are going to get there.
Can I just say,
really,
in your current list, I see that Cheshire Cat completely has replaced Belle. What's up with that?
Yes. Yeah. So I think the bottom line is that we need to commit ourselves to being an aggressive go-under deck. I think that's the best way to play Ruby Amethyst. Again, the Diablos, we have a plethora of 1-drops, which we've gone up to 8 copies of, so we can flood the board even more. And again, against these decks against Goliath for blue steel, or against the Emerald decks that are playing Clarabelle, you want to empty your hand anyway. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we are very much punished for holding cards at the moment. So I think really all this deck wants to do is curve out and go into Headless Horseman to remove something, and then play Demona, and just do the purple steel thing of saying, if I Demona you before you Demona me, I am going to just win the game on the spot. I'm going to make all the efficient trades, hopefully with my Tinkerbell. Sisu and Vanellope can hit for reasonable damage. Vanellope is another one who is kind of flex, and has only really come into the deck because of I've seen an increase in 3-cost Tinkerbell in Amethyst decks that are just becoming even more aggressive. Now, there is a larger conversation to be had here for how this deck might need to continue to change if there does end up being a lot of Amber Steel aggro in the meta. Because as it stands, it's not unwinnable. We do have some very aggressive curves we can make here. Tinkerbell into Lumiere, or Vanellope into Sisu or Cheshire Cat, into Iago or Hercules, and we'll get to Hercules. There are okay curves, but we still struggle to interact with the Tiana, who really can ruin our day. So there could be a conversation to be had for going back to the Daring Visitor Sisu if there's enough Tiana out there, and again, if there's enough 3-cost Tinkerbell out there. But I like having the Vanellope to be the answer to the 3-cost Tinkerbell, because unfortunately, our 4-drop slot is just not reliable to be an answer to these purple decks, who are just going to sing strength, or if they're on the play, he hold his Thunderbolt. And that's one of the reasons we've gone down to a 3 count of Iago, who Iago isn't great at the moment, Like, in the mirror, you absolutely want to see him. Although that being said, there were points in time where I was playing Hypnotic Strength or I was playing They Never Come Back just to be like an answer to an opposing Iago. Because in the mirror, Iago isn't a very annoying card. It can be hard to interact with unless you've got that action package in your deck. But against the steel decks, they just don't care. They're running 4 strength. They're running 3 to 4 along Game Zeus. They are just popping your 4-drop every single time, and this Iago is not a reliable way to answer there if they made an evasive curve, so a la Tinkerbell. And that is the main reason. Sorry?
Did you try Bronx in this list?
So I was playing Bronx in the Cheshire Cat for the slot. When Cheshire Cat was first revealed, I was very high on it. I liked the idea of like just the kind of way it forces your opponent to play the game and the potential to move damage multiple times. I played about 10 games with it, never did anything, or it was ink, and I just kind of was like, I think this is probably underwhelming, and I changed it to Bronx, who I did really like. He's just for the 6/4. Yes, he does have the Stone by Day, so if you are drawing a lot of cards, there's a potential that he doesn't ready at the start of the turn. But my philosophy was, well, if he's turned sideways, hopefully it's because I took something out, I got an efficient challenge off, and then he survived. And then he's already kind of done his job, and it's kind of whatever if he doesn't turn sideways again. And again, we are in a format of big, bulky bodies. You look at the deck that Kawa just had up with the Tinkerbells and the Goliaths and the Vincenzos, and like the Namaris. Like, it's important to be able to hit 5/6, and against green, you want to hit John Silvers, you want to hit the Clarabells. Like, it's just a very big, bulky body format. So the Bronx were really good for that reason. The reason they've come out is because, like I said, I think the way I'm leaning more of Ruby Amethyst now is to lean more into we're going to go under. We're not going to sit there and wait and have the big answers to these big bodies like Bronx and Maleficence. We are just going to try and win the game before we even get to that point in time. So Bronx is still a card that I'm a fan of, but just doesn't complement the latest iteration about how I'm trying to build Ruby Amethyst. Yeah. And again, a couple of shout outs again to SLTC, my testing group, who again, I'm always bouncing ideas and taking ideas off of them. I've also spoken to I think he's mentioned this publicly. I've spoken to Tiago a lot about Ruby Amethyst as well and taken on some of his thoughts. And yeah, this is kind of where we're at the moment. Cheshire Cat has come back into the list to replace Bronx and has been better than my original 10 games with him. Again, he's just one of these I don't want to call it combat trick, but like it kind of is. It like in the same way that you have to play around Bell, right? Against purple decks. If this Cheshire Cat is down, it just makes it can explode your brain, to be honest, like, and make them really overthink things concerning whether or not they should be turning sideways. And the high roll is still there. You can still just play it on 5 and move 2 down. Like, you can genie into their genie, put it down the Cheshire Cat on 5, and then immediately use it. Like, it has good uses. And the 3/4 stat line in particular is quite annoying for a lot of decks that are really only consistently hitting 3. Don't get me wrong, there are exceptions. Lexington can hit 4, etc. But just 4 willpower is quite tricky. So I'm enjoying the Cheshire Cat again at the moment. But then the main event is the Hercules, who I've got on an absolute emotional roller coaster with this card. I streamed opening 6 boxes of Whispers in the Well, and I was looking for my 3 Demona, my 4 Horsemen, and my 4 Hades. I got 1 Horseman. I did get my 3 Demona. That was good. Very happy with that. But I got 1 Horseman, 1 Hades, and 4 Hercules. I know Kim got even more, Kawa. I saw it the other day. But I was just, the frustration was growing with this Hercules so much, and I crashed out. I mean, it was a bit. I was just kind of trying to be entertained, but I crashed out with this Hercules. And then I heard some people were playing it, and I was like, have you gone insane? You're going to play this on 4, they're going to Elsa it, and they're going to take it out with their 1-drop. Just in case for some people that might not be familiar, Hercules is a 4-cost uninkable 5/3 quest for 2. This character can't be dealt damage unless he's being challenged. And while this character is exerted, your other hero characters can't be dealt damage unless they're being challenged. So yeah, I was just so stuck on this idea of like, I'm going to play this Hercules, they're going to Elsa it, and they're going to trade their Captain Hook or their Rafiki into it, and that's just going to be game over. And I'm playing this extra uninkable card, which, hey, that's going to happen, and it's going to suck. That being said, I think it's not the more oppressive problem we have as Ruby Amethyst at the moment. Our most oppressive problem is against the purple decks, specifically Amethyst Steel, which I think is just one of the best decks in the game, in the meta at the moment, if not the best. Again, there are arguments against blue steel and green blue. I think those are your two contenders for like your best decks. But purple steel will be super popular. And again, amber steel with their playing strength. Amber steel and amethyst steel can interact with our board on their turn 4. We can't do anything to their board until our turn 5. Again, this is assuming they're not turning sideways, which good players are not turning sideways unless it's safe to do so because you missed a curve drop or something. So that's our problem. We can't interact until we get to the Elsa turn. We can exert something and then we can start to do things. Whereas they can sing Strength for a Raging Fire on turn 4, or if they're on the play, they can sing Holy's Thunderbolt on their turn 5 before we get to have our interaction turn. And that's where Hercules comes in, because you put down this Hercules, it cannot be strengthed, it cannot be Zeused. The only thing it needs to worry about is Elsa and only on the draw, right? Because if you're on the play and you get to play this Hercules and then you Elsa, and then this Hercules takes out their 1, 2, or 3 drop, maybe their 4 drop, unless it was evasive, which it probably was. So you take out the Lexington or the Calhoun with this Hercules, he takes no damage in return. You've skewed their strength numbers. You're now at least getting a 2-for-1 out of this Hercules. And so that's why I've come around to the conclusion that Hercules is better, because otherwise we have no way of having a secure 4 drop. And now all we need to worry about is turn 5 on the draw, whereas now our turn 4 drop is potentially a little bit safer. He's still not the best card in the world. Blue-green doesn't always care the most about him. Don't get me wrong. Like, maybe you managed to take out a John Silver, maybe with a Lumiere on board, so you're hitting for 6. You can take out Clarabelle or something like that. But he is lacking evasive, which can be relevant as well. They can just Hades him. But I think against purple steel, this is I don't know how I want to put it. Like, this skews the scale in our favor a little bit more. That's kind of my justification for Hercules at the moment. And also the secondary ability for your other heroes, just to mention. Elsa and Dumbo and Sisu are all heroes, which is enough, to be honest. If they can't challenge your Dumbo now with their Iago or your Elsa, maybe they're trying to set up a bell trap by going Genie into Elsa or something like that. Again, it's not an interaction that's going to come up all the time, but it's significant enough that it's like worth bearing in mind. So yeah, this is kind of where I'm at the moment. There are some things here that could absolutely be flex. Libraries, I'm still enjoying. The insulation against Philip is nice if you get to do it. If they go turbo ramp Cinderella into Cinderella, then you kind of don't even have the time to establish the library and move characters to it. But if they miss a turn, then the library can insulate you. And against the other purple decks, because we have the ability to control the board quite well with Horseman, Demona, and Elsa plays, you can create these situations where you've cleared the board and you can just play this library. And it wins you the game, but it kind of feels like you've already won the game at that point. So I don't know. I'm still a bit to and fro with the library. The Vanellope's could change because, again, your Horseman can answer the Tinkerbell. But if they're on the play, they still get 2 quests out of it, and I'm sure I like that. So yeah, there's definitely some flex here. And I don't know if Hercules will survive my entire Ruby Amethyst Sect 10 play. But at the moment, he feels kind of like a necessary evil.
I think Vanellope is also a hero, so she also benefits from Hercules' effect.
Absolutely. 100%.
I like what she's there.
Yeah, I find it interesting. It's important that you mentioned those flex slots, yeah, because the Vanellope against the Tinkerbells is so strong. Like I mentioned, even I think Tinkerbell is such a great 1 cost anyways. You could always justify playing this card. But again, I'm thinking of like some malicious meaning scary, but it's for different matchups, right? It's like if you're against that, you just think the Vanellope and it's fine. But as you're talking through Hercules, like, we're all talking about, as you said, we're opening Hercules. Oh, where's my Hades? Where's my Demona? I don't want this Hercules. But this card does have something very unique to it, which is kind of like ward-ish on a Ruby character, right?
Yeah.
That's the way you need to think about it. And it's not a strict ward, right? Because Hercules can still be given reckless, can still be targeted by other things. But like most stuff for ward, you're playing it so it checks against being damaged and just ultimately removed, right? This is damage removal, not hard removal, but how much hard removal are you going to use to get rid of a 5/3? Not very much. So I think in that sense, it's actually, like, from a game design standpoint, I think I really understand why this is worthy of a legendary slot, if that makes sense. The ability is so incredibly unique. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it has some place as a specific 4-drop that just can't be interacted with. But I really enjoyed you talking through that there, Baker, because it gave me a bit more appreciation for this card, I think, if that makes sense.
Again, like, it's been a journey to get there. Like, it's a love-hate relationship that I have with him because I do not think this is a good card. I want to make that clear. I think it's a necessary card, just thinking of the structure of the expected meta game, again, into a couple of very specific cards. And again, like, if you played Lumiere on 2, then hitting for 6. Yeah, it just has niche uses. It's just because the 4-drop slot just keeps getting Zeus, mate, or straight. And I've had enough. But I'm just had enough.
Well, I get steel is going to be a popular color moving forward. And the third deck, the one that I brought, also integrates steel into the mix. I think it's a well-feared deck from last set. Let's take a look at Amber Steel. This is basically a little brew that I'm experimenting with. So I got 4 Auroras. I only got 2 Daisy Ducks because personally, I don't like dropping her on turn 1. I love Daisy as a turn 4, turn 5 to build a board and to have questing power. But on turn 1, if you can't drop Daisy, then I feel like you're just feeding your opponents too many cards. So I prefer some other drops. And what I'm looking at with this deck is I want a Singer 3 or Singer 4 on turn 2. So I got my Rhino and I got my Rhino Shift Lines. I've got my 4 Troubadours. And I've got Tiana, who can also sing Strength of Raging Fire to control the board, to reduce my opponent's power. And what I am absolutely trying to do here is to just dodge the later turns in the game, end the game as quickly as possible. And whenever my opponent is going, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, I'm ramping, I'll be building my board, and then I'll be trying to snipe their spooky sites. I'll be trying to snipe their board wipes with either delaying them with Pete, having them clear their hand a bit more, and then dropping my Mowgli's to just snatch them out of their hand and ending the turn before those big characters can get into action. Thoughts on this list, guys?
I love the overall build of this list. I think the 4 Mowgli's is like the perfect inclusion. There's one suggestion on my part that if we want to be, there's 2 things. One of them is we want to be a very aggressive deck if we're playing Amber Steel, and there's a couple of different versions that we saw in the previous set that some had like Calhouns and some didn't, like maybe Calhouns or Lilos or something else. And I understand that Calhoun, it's like such an incredibly strong card. It really helps against specific matchups where I don't know, maybe against Amethyst Steel a little bit, but I think when the majority of your deck is built around that, like most of your characters have basically 1 to 2 strength, and that the Calhoun is one character that's trying to have a bit of attacking power. This is just me, but I like to try and play the version that is just, I'm going to stick to the super low to the ground ones. And like, I'll play a 2-drop that's maybe inkable, like a Lilo, like the Escape Artist, that can also be card draw in a sense. But I really do understand why the Calhoun's here. It is a couple more uninkable slots. The only other thing is, while I think it makes sense to try out the He Hurled His Thunderbolt in this list, I actually think it's a little bit of a trap. I think it's a lot of uninkables to put in the deck, but then also you only have 2 very efficient ways to use it, right? You have Troubadour, which has been proven to be very, very strong, and you have a Shift Rhino line. I think the Shift Rhino line in general, if you're trying to be the aggressive deck, is not always the way you want to go. You maybe want to be doing Aurora into Tiana, or Aurora into like Mulan and then Nala. So I think what you need to do is, as Baker talked about, they're always going to be able to strength whatever your 4-cost card is, or even in the sense of this, they strength your 3-cost card because they can sing it a turn earlier, right, with Tiana or Troubadour. So you need to think about, out of all of the cards in this deck, how many can sing Thunderbolt versus how many can sing Strength.
Yeah.
And with being able to do like Aurora into Tiana to then play Lady plus a 2-drop sing Strength, at that stage, you're basically playing Thunderbolt. You're dealing 4 damage. And not only is it your Tiana, but it's your Troubadour, and it's any of your 3-drops. Like, even if you don't go Aurora into Tiana, you can just do 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop Sing Strength. Whereas if you don't specifically have Shift Rhino or Troubadour, you'd have to go 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, play one of my 4-drops or hard cast the He Hurled His Thunderbolt. So I just think it's maybe weird to say, but a little bit too top end, even in a deck like this. It's a couple of uninkable slots that I would maybe try and put something in that's a tad bit more aggressive, perhaps. But the general build overall is, I think, very reminiscent of what we saw in the previous set, which was just very, very strong. And I think the new tools that this deck got from the new set is just this Mowgli. I think putting 4 Mowgli in this deck makes perfect sense. It's a great card that you can actually just also combine with Lady. It's fine. On the play, you could play Mowgli, potentially snipe the 2-cost ramp out of the Sapphire opponent's hand. Like, if their only ramp spell is Sail the Azurite Sea, if you're going first, you can do that. I will say, I don't think you're going to be ever happy if you're doing like a 1-drop plus a Mowgli. You'd much rather do like, I don't know, a 1-drop plus a Penny or a Troubadour or a Nala, something a little bit more aggressive. But if you're against a Sapphire deck and you happen to have the Mowgli, you're like, I could take a chance on turn 2. And if that chance pays off, the Sapphire deck is a whole turn behind. Like, they are a whole turn behind. They're super messed up. And then after that, then you can just play Ladies into Nalas or just Tiana, that type of stuff. So overall, I like the build, but that would be maybe my suggestion is there could be something else for the Thunderbolt. So maybe like a one-off I could understand for sure, though.
Yep.
Yeah, I think my feedback is largely the same for not just the things that Carl was already brought up about, like, who's reliably singing this. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I can hear you. Yep, yeah, all good.
Yeah, not just because of, like, wondering who's singing this, but, like, the thing with Amber Steel is that quite often, inevitably, they lose the board. And they're, like, hopefully you get to 20 just before that happens, right? But quite often you'll get to 15, 16, 17, 18.
Yep.
And it's all you need to do is to have something stick. For 1 turn, your opponent maybe needs 4 or 5 turns to build up, because they've been trying to spend all their time clearing up everything you've got. They've probably not been doing any questing, so they probably need still 3, 4 turns to win the game. So you get to this point where you just like, I need to draw something, play it, and for you to not have an answer once. Again, depending on how high in law you got. And you're going to be in that situation, you're going to be drawing Thunderbolts is kind of one of my issues. I want more characters that are just questing, like that we're drawing off the top. So yeah, like, I don't get me wrong, I like a single Thunderbolt, and I'm just thinking of it really as 5th strength. Again, assuming that the Troubadour is singing it. I think if you want to play 2, it's kind of fine because you're running Mulans anyway, so that's hopefully getting you out of, I mean, the Mulligan is very generous already, so that hopefully helps a lot. And then you've got Mulans to hopefully get you out of uninkable situations, because again, this deck is always going to have high uninkable count, right? But I think you could cut like 2 or 3 Zeus. I think I'd like to put 1 more Daisy slot in there, like you say. Like, I think she is better on turn like 3, 4, or 5 when you're extending. I want to see her, right? I want to be able to play 2 a lot of the time as well. So and again, that's another character where if you're at that 18 lore or you're just topping, this is another Quest of 2 character, right? That's just going to get you over the line. So I'd like to see at least 1 more Daisy, and I think Kawa mentioned right at the beginning, like, I think Lilo could put in some work here, but 100%. Again, when you reach that point where you're just like, I need something to stick, and you're at 4 ink, then okay, I'm bringing back the Lilo, I'm topping something, a 2-drop. I'm playing a Penny, I'm playing a whatever, a Nala. Now you have to have answers for both. So everything else makes perfect sense to me, but yeah, I'd like to see like minus probably 3 Thunderbolt. And you can go 3 Lilo, you can go 2 Lilo and a Daisy. You could even top up that Pete slot to 4, because again, it is super important in the mirror and against Amethyst Steel. Again, knowing you can, like, on the play, even if they drop a Troubadour, then you turn off their turn 3 strength. So yeah, I think if you wanted to raise the Pete count, but yeah, I agree with Kawa. I think Zeus is what I would be cutting here, and everything else looks great.
I kind of agree with your assessment of this deck. The number of Zeuses can absolutely be reduced. And I really like the addition of Lilo because it feels like, like you said, at the end of the game, you're just scrambling to get something to stick. And just that one or two Lilo that are in your discard pile factually count as just 2 extra cards that they continuously need to solve. And they'll have to solve them by either challenging in them, giving you a little bit of extra time to find the thing that sticks, and just adding just a little bit of extra damage every time to your opponent's board. Or they can't answer it, and you just have something that sticks, counts as an extra card that you drew. So wonderful suggestions. We'll absolutely look into that. Then I think it's time to hop into our next segment. Our community members actually sent in some decks that they wanted your feedback on. We have a deck doc on a particularly interesting Ruby Sapphire list. So we see here 3 Mulans, 4 Tipo, 4 Mickey Mouse, the legendary that can shift on a different Mickey Mouse to give itself a lot stronger stats. We have the Mickey Mouse Detective. We got 3 Cinderella. We got 2 Horsemen. This person was actually also on the Horseman plan. But then in addition, we've got David Xanathos with also Maui Shark, a card that we haven't seen yet in any other Ruby build. 3 Shift Mulan, 4 Hades, and 4 Maleficent Dragons. This person is absolutely looking to get into the end game and to remove the board. 4 Develop Your Brain, 4 Sail the Azurite Sea, 4 Visions of the Future, 4 Time to Go. I'm not even sure what that card does. I can't hear you right now, Baker.
Sorry, I muted myself. You banish one of your own characters to draw 2, but if that card had a card under them, then you draw 3 instead.
Interesting, okay. And then we got 2 Spooky Sites and 4 Pirate's Life. Very interesting build. What's your takes?
I'll let you start, Baker. Go ahead. Yeah, I've been playing some red-blue lately, so, and again, I do like me some Ruby cards. Mostly everything here looks fine. Like, again, Mickey is a lot of fun. And again, like, it's very good if especially on the play, if you do go turn 3 Mickey into turn 4 big Mickey and you're now questing for 4 with 5 evasive, that can be a lot for decks to answer. Some will be able to, like, the Amethyst Steel deck shouldn't have a huge problem just extending to 5 characters and just strengthen you, which is where it can really fall apart. I opted not to play the Mickey Mouse engine myself, but I am playing the Sharks, and I think absolutely if you're playing Red-Blue, you play this Shark engine along with David Xanatos, who, on quest, you can give one of your characters Rush, which is what, like, Maui need. I think what Maui Shark needs, really. Again, in previous formats, we saw DKP putting a lot of work with no way to give Rush to Shark and just having it sit there, and, like, that can be fine. But, like, I loved Shark in Red-Purple with Peter Pan Shadowfinder, who has obviously now been rotated out. And yeah, in Red, we've got this new tool, this David Xanatov, who's a 5/5 quest for 2. He costs 6, so he fits into our 2/4/6 curve if we're going Cinderella, so we can play it super quickly. And then you can play your Shark on 7 and then immediately give it Rush, which I think is humongous. It was that reason that I was playing a couple of copies of Mushu's Rocket, which is just a 1-cost inkable on play. You give a character Rush, but it also sticks on the board, and you can also pay 2 and banish it to give character Rush. So you add a 1 Mushu's Rocket and 3 ink. Technically, you get 2 Rush uses. But I was playing 3 of them along with 3 medallion weights and leaning a little bit into items. I wasn't playing the 6-drop Tamatoa, but I was playing 1 copy of My Solve a Mystery, which is a perfectly reasonable 4-cost song for Cinderella to sing. Again, this deck struggles with draws, so I like the medallion weight. So I like a light item package in there as well. I think this deck is also missing probably a 5-cost Queen of Hearts because you're just not drawing cards. That's the problem. Like against the blue decks, the steel decks, I want to play Goliath, or the purple decks, I want to play Demona on you. You could be fine. You just hyper ramp, empty your hand, and then they refresh you, and then you're drawing into Hades and Maleficents and big bodies. Outside of that, you got no card draw. So I would like to see either Queen of Hearts or Medallion Weights, maybe a mix. The card I don't like is the Ruby card that I just mentioned. I can't even remember what it's called.
Time to Go, yeah. I also don't like this card. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that card at all. So, like, I think you're banishing one of your own characters. You're drawing 2 for a 3 cost. Maybe you're drawing 3 if you specifically banish the Mickey with a Mickey under him. That doesn't sound like enough reason to play a card and like not a great use of a card. I would never want to do that. Why are you banishing your Mickey?
You know what this feels like, Baker? This was giving me dinner bell vibes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
More how he feels about this card. Maybe we're wrong, Kawa. Maybe the spice.
Maybe this. I'm not a break the meta. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not a fan of it. It's making you banish your own characters. The only way you're drawing 3 with it is by banishing with Mickey, and who wants to do that? And it's so incredibly slow. I know we have a first few slow turns anyway, but that's with the belief that we're going to then burst into these mid to like high cost characters, not times ago to draw 2. So I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say briefly, I think the only idea of where time to go can really work is if we ever get characters that have really good set like on banish effects. The only one I can think of is like a 1-cost Diablo, right? Where we banish it, we get an extra card. Like exactly, like those are the type of cards that I would see this combo with, and then I'd actually be like, okay, maybe there's some reason to play it, right? You know,
give me a 1-drop with boost, so that you can literally draw 4 for playing this. Then maybe. But yeah, final couple of points. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the time to go. I get rid of that. If you're enjoying the Mickey package, I think you go ahead. I think you're like, if they're not running purple steel, you should have a reasonable time. Although worth noting, like if there's any World's Greatest Criminal Mind, those pesky red yellow decks with their Criminal Minds and their Horseman Strikes. But a couple of cards that you might want to consider. Again, I mentioned the Mushu's Rocket, another way to give Rush to your Shark. Medallion Waits or Queen of Hearts if you want some draw. But this is actually a deck that I 100% Hercules should be in. Because of course, if you can ramp into Cinderella and then go into 6, that's preferable. But say you don't hit the Cinderella. There's actually an argument to adding a Kida here for if you don't hit the Cinderella and you want to take curve instead. Because then you're on turn 4, your 5-ink turn, you play Horseman and then you ramp into Hades. So Kida is something you might want to consider, but I've really enjoyed Hercules in red-blue. Being able to hyper ramp into it has been really nice. 2 Spooky Sight is probably enough. If you probably have to keep it on Mulligan, in case, especially on the draw. If you do come up against Amber Steel. But that being said, you're running the Mulan package, who is also very interesting. But Tiana is still probably going to ruin your day. So yeah, I like a lot of it. I think Sharks and Horsemen and David Xanatov, I think this is all correct. Pirate's Life, obviously the Malleys and the Hades. That's why we're playing this deck, right? But yeah, it's things to consider. Like, do we prefer the Mickey package? Is this Mulan doing nothing because they're just playing evasive characters? Then Time to Go is absolutely what I would cut first. But yeah, Kawa, I don't know if you've got any additional thoughts or different opinion.
I really agree with a lot that you said. I'm curious to dive a little bit deeper into some of the item package stuff that you mentioned. So you said like Mushu's Rocket. I think Medallion Waits is a great show. I also think that Might Solve a Mystery is maybe the perfect card to pair with Cinderella. My only concern is I remember talking to Frank Carson about this card, and it's about how many items you need to play for this card to actually be very impactful. So like 8 really isn't enough. But if you can, those are probably 2 of the best items.
6, so it's definitely not enough.
Yeah, it's like those are definitely the 2 best items. Maybe you can do, it's like the Ink Runner is like the 2-cost popsicle, right? And try and get a little bit more draw. So if you can try and get those numbers up there, then Might Solve a Mystery just becomes a basically draw 2 for free if you sing it with Cinderella. I've also tried a lot of red-blue versions in the past. Like I'm actually a big fan of Beagle Boys, which is another card you can ramp into on 4. The biggest problem with Beagle Boys, and every set I feel like I'm doing this, I'm looking at the 5-cost slot, and there's no like super strong, good 5-cost card. And now maybe doing it with Horsemen could be okay. Like you get rid of one of their things, and then you also give the Horseman Rush just to take something out. Like that sounds like it's okay. I never really want to give my 5-cost Queen of Hearts draw engine Rush. I kind of want to protect that as much as I can at times. So there's been no like super good 5-cost to do it, but I agree for the same reasons you mentioned for David Xanatos, for the Maui Half Shark, and even for the Mulan. The Mulan's a little bit different because when you don't do the shift line, it comes in with such a lower amount of strength. But if you're playing Medallion Weights, then maybe it's actually okay. You can buff it up a little bit. So Beagle Boys is something to kind of consider maybe, but you really have to think about what 5 cost cards are going to pair along nicely with that. Or like, what's weird is you could try and go straight into the 6 cost. Like you'd have to. It would be really a big deck building constraint where you'd probably have to put some 1-jumps into your deck. Where if you've done like Tipo and then you play Beagle Boys and then you like 1-jump with your Tipo, so then the next turn you can actually go straight into your Maui Half Shark. But
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of hoops to jump through, to be honest. But I really enjoy this. I like this idea of like deck dock where like I think there's something very interesting here. And I think throughout like, all of us even in this call, like we add different elements so we can see different avenues or different routes to take. So I'd love to pass this over to you, Emma, to see if there's anything you would potentially like to consider adding.
I would like to add a for Cinderella. I think that's a very
Yeah. It's a good inclusion, yeah.
And then I'm actually considering maybe Aurora, the one that gives wards to your entire package. Because, like you said, the Mickey Mouse package is super strong, but it's prone to removal, and then your day's ruined. If you jump from 3 to 5, you got your Aurora there to give ward to your entire team. Next turn you shift, and you're just off to the races. And as someone who adores playing removal and adores interacting with the board, there's nothing that ruins my day more than a pair of Auroras.
Sure, double Aurora, yeah.
Also, I think a pair of Auroras, for example, completely shut down Sapphire Steel interaction because you can't Hades stuff anymore. You're not going to throw anything any damage with Vicente.
Yeah, but Enzo or Horseman, they all get shut down, actually. Yeah, that's a card I think in general people should maybe pay attention to within the meta. Like, no, but it's not. Yeah, I think it's a little bit slept on. It's maybe not the easiest card to just include many of them, right? I think it could be like a 1 or 2 all slot, but when one of those Auroras comes down, like when the meta right now is so, it cares about interactability, right? In terms of people are playing the Sapphire decks are so interactable, and the only way to get around that is like the Prince Philip.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think Philip that's keeping her. Oh, I think if it wasn't for the fact, I think if all our removal was targeted, but King Undisputed, then it would probably be a slightly more popular card. But again, who knows? Like we're only with
a week
with the new set. There's been a couple of events, sure, but like I'm fascinated to see what Wakefield will be towards the end of the month for an event me and Kawa are doing, a CCQ in the event where me and Kawa will be playing and I get to play. So I'm very excited for that, but also just to like see what the breakdown of the meta share is going to be for that room and what people might be hiding. But yeah, red, blue, I think it's a much better position than it was last set. And yeah, I think, I definitely would get rid of the Time to Go. I think that's easy the worst card I can see in this deck. If you're going to consider some Aurora, then I could get behind the Mickey a lot more. If you're not going to play the Aurora, then I would consider losing the Mickey and maybe putting those spots into some other things. And just final thought on My Solve a Mystery, to your point, it was I was wrestling with, is this worth playing if I'm playing so little items? I was like, I'd go up to 4, because I'm only on 3 Mushu and 3 Medallion Ways, but I was like, I could go up to more, but I was like, I don't really want more. It just doesn't feel right. So to be honest, My Solve a Mystery, when it's not hit an item, has kind of just felt like a singable, slightly worse Vision, right? Because most of you get characters anyway. It's normally characters you fish out with Vision in a red-blue matchup anyway. You look for Hades, you're looking for Maleficent, all those sort of things. So even if you don't hit an item, just Cinderella letting me look at the top 4 and take a character has kind of just been
like be our guest, right? Yeah.
Like, again, it's Shark, so it's another action for Shark as well on top of everything else, right? So, but yeah, this looks good. But the Time to Go. It's time to go.
It's time to go. It's time to go.
Well, that was it for our Deck Doc segment. Thank you, Baker, for your wonderful feedback on that incredible Sapphire Ruby deck. I'm very excited to see what tools and what extra tech and what that deck might grow into. Kawa, as well, thank you so much for being here, giving your opinion and your feedback, and just talking to you about these incredible new decks. And
It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I think the 3 decks we got to talk about all have a very interesting place within the meta. I think it was actually really nice because we kind of got like control deck, mid-range deck, and aggro deck in a sense. So all pieces of the puzzle. And then talk about the red-blue deck was super fun. I was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed that of like, looking at a little bit more of these rogue combinations, or at least just more unexplored combinations, and talking about what we could do to maybe make it a little bit more consistent.
yeah, absolutely. It's super interesting, and it's definitely a segment we want to continue doing here, just highlighting our community decks and building together, helping them out with also building a stronger deck, and yeah, helping them have fun at their local game store. Talking about helping people have fun, please make sure to check out the ticket sales that are going up this Saturday at 6 p.m. CET. Tickets will be going up for DLC Ghent. Do not miss this. There will be 4,096 main event tickets. This will be an incredibly huge event. I hope we will see each and every one of you there. There's plenty of space. If we sell out now in like the first 3 minutes, I'll be very surprised, shocked, and unsure what we'll have to do to create even more capacity than this. But I think with 4,000 tickets, it's going to be an incredible show. What do you think, Kawa?
Yeah, I'm very, very excited for Ghent. I'm going to try my best to get some tickets on Saturday as well. Just to see as much of the Lorcana community as possible. I know there's a high demand for these events. I know a lot of people want to be here. A lot of people want to compete. So I think it's going to be a very, very special event. It is also notable it's going to be winter spell meta, right? It's going to be set 11. So I think we're going to be able to mess around with Whispers in the Well a lot within kind of the CCQs and try them out in a little bit like kind of smaller tournaments. And it's going to be really fun to see like a lot of fresh new decks once we enter the winter spell meta. So I'm really excited. It's like pretty big for, I guess, like Belgium and Belgian players too, right? It's the first DLC there, which is super, super cool. So yeah, I'm hyped.
Well, the very first DLC in Lille was not too far away from Belgium, so many of the Belgian players were able to attend that. But that was also the first DLC. It was a smaller DLC than this one.
Ghent.
Than Ghent, absolutely. And yeah, now we also have space for approximately 300 attendees who can enjoy the event. So come by. Come play side events. If you're not, if you're not the competitive style player, this event is for all Lorcana players. Come trade. Come visit the vendors and pick up the singles that you need. Come enjoy the live stream broadcasts at the event, and come play side events. Collect those ticks and get those prize wall promos. They are gorgeous and absolutely worth your time to drop by.
Amazing. Cannot wait.
Thank you all. Till next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.